A couple years ago on this channel, I reviewed Sam Raimi's Darkman, the movie that Sam Raimi directed, which was his first major studio job with Universal that also led to Army of Darkness getting picked up by Universal. It was a simple enough premise. Sam Raimi basically wanted to do a film adaptation of The Shadow, couldn't get the rights to do it, so he came up with the original character of Darkman. The whole thing just really plays off of the fascination that we as a people had in the late 80s and early 90s with darker and grittier superhero adaptations. Movies like RoboCop, Batman 89, The Crow, etc. For more info on the first Darkman movie, you can go ahead and check out my review that I did. I'll throw the little link thing in the corner here. But to just kind of recap, Darkman followed a scientist named Peyton Westlake who is researching artificial skin for burn/disfigurement victims, and in an ironic twist of fate, after being pulled into a major real estate conspiracy, he himself ends up horribly burned and disfigured. Using the artificial skin, Westlake embarks on a journey of revenge against those who ruined his life and uncovers the true driving force behind the conspiracy. Oh, and the accident also did something to his brain where he can't really feel emotions very well, but he gets all these adrenaline surges, so it's kind of like an in the realm of reality superhero type deal. Darkman was a pretty solid movie. I wouldn't say it's like the greatest movie, but it's a good watch. It's a fun watch. If I see it on TV or if somebody's watching it, I'll sit down and watch it. It has its moments. It has the same problem that a lot of late 80s and early 90s movies have, which it's not really a problem, but there's something about the way movies looked in the late 80s and early 90s where it's like it's the best film has ever and probably will ever look, and it's like, you know, that doesn't sound like a problem, but it is. Another thing is, like, back in the day, they really knew how to make these concepts come to life within like a 90-minute time frame. They wanted these movies to be as short as humanly possible so that they could get more showtimes in. Now the ethic is all different. They go for like 3-hour movies and it's just like, oh my god, get on with it. Darkman was a quick watch and it was an easy watch and it is very engaging, and Sam Raimi's unique directorial style made it a fun watch, which is foreshadowing for where I'm going with this review. Darkman was a sleeper hit at the box office and with critics. It was praised for being another great installment in the late 80s, early 90s gritty superhero genre. However, it also got further praise for its originality and for Sam Raimi's general approach to filmmaking, where even when it's serious, it's not that serious. Sam Raimi just has this knack for making movies fun, and Darkman is a perfect reflection of that. Darkman was a movie that Universal didn't really expect to do very well, but despite that, Darkman ended up making $48 million versus its $14 million budget, which would qualify it as a somewhat high-moderate box office success. However, where Darkman really thrived was in home video rentals. In fact, it was such a hot rental item when it came out on home video that Blockbuster actually approached Universal looking for a sequel. However, Universal was not interested in producing a sequel, as while Darkman was a sleeper hit that garnered a cult following, it wasn't the hit that they wanted. Which brings us on our first little detour here, looking into the early 90s straight-to-video fad. Essentially, a movie that was a surprise hit or had a cult following was always something that studios would want to follow up on, but there was a certain risk factor with that. Take, for example, Highlander. The first Highlander movie didn't really do particularly well in the box office, but it was a hot rental item, and it does have a very loyal and devoted cult fan base. This was recognized, and then Highlander 2 came out, and Highlander 2 is considered to be one of the worst movies ever made and a complete box office bomb. So what I'm getting at here is, like, let's say you have a movie that was a modest hit, or it ended up getting a cult following, and you decide, hey, let's keep this ball rolling, we could definitely make more money off of people. That doesn't always work. Even with movies that are major hits, there's a chance that the sequel just simply never lives up to its box office. If you go out of your way and you make a sequel to a movie like that and release it theatrically, there's a very distinct possibility that it bombs and therefore loses you a bunch of money, and in some cases could even nullify any gains that the original movie had. So in the 90s, it was relatively common for a movie that was a modest hit to receive a sequel that ended up going straight to the shelves of your video store. Because while a sequel to a cult movie in theaters is a high-risk, low-reward venture, that figure was flipped when it came to home video. It was low-risk, high-reward. Especially considering you could slash the budget, stick a TV production crew on the job, and cheap out on the effects because it was going to be watched on a smaller screen anyway. With that being said, it goes without saying that Universal wasn't quite sold on the idea of a Darkman sequel theatrically, but they couldn't deny that while the movie was a modest hit in theaters, it was a major hit with rentals. Why else would Blockbuster of all companies literally come to you inquiring about a sequel? So Universal decided to follow the next logical conclusion, and they made a TV pilot that rebooted the series and brought back Larry Drake as Durant and gave Darkman a bunch of supporting characters, including a streetwise plucky African-American kid.
What the hell is that?
They kind of missed the assignment here. This really doesn't line up with what I just said, but we're getting to it. Suffice to say, the pilot did not make it to air. The only thing that exists of that pilot now is a really crappy quality version of it, so Universal just said, fuck it, let's just make a straight-to-video sequel. So in 1994, Universal announced that Darkman 2 and 3 would be going into production and would be the first live-action straight-to-video features from Universal. While Universal had a handful of made-for-TV movies, such as The Birds 2 and Psycho 4, that were released on home video, they did originally air on television. But Darkman 2 and Darkman 3 were going to be the first ever straight-to-video Universal productions. Now, Darkman 2 and 3 were back-to-back shootings, but it wasn't like a directly back-to-back deal. Darkman 2 was shot, and then there was a 4-week gap, and then they shot Darkman 3.
Now, from this point on, things get a little bit confusing.
The movie they shot as Darkman 2 actually ended up being Darkman 3, and the movie they shot as Darkman 3 ended up actually being Darkman 2, Return of Durant. They shot what would become Darkman 2 last because Larry Drake had some obligations with TV contracts. And since they wanted to use the Durant character as the main villain of the TV show, and in general the character was relatively popular with fans, it comes as no surprise that when the time came to make a straight-to-video Darkman movie, they figured, hey, let's get fucking Larry Drake back so we can do Durant again. However, after they shot both the movies, it was decided that they were going to flip it, and Darkman 3 was now Darkman 2, and Darkman 2 was now Darkman 3. This is confusing me even as I speak of it. But just to Darkman 2 was shot after Darkman 3. And Darkman 2, Return of Durant, as I mentioned, features the return of Robert G. Durant from Darkman after he recovers from his slight case of a fucking helicopter crashing into a bridge and exploding. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I honestly can't say I completely blame them for deciding to simply downplay the severity of a slight case of fucking helicopter crashing into a bridge and exploding. Because there was no chance in hell they were going to get Liam Neeson back for this, but they decided, well, we got to get someone back, and Larry Drake was available after like a couple of weeks because he was still doing TV shows. Them shooting the sequels and then flipping the release didn't really have that much of an effect on how the movies feel. There are some minor continuity snags between the two movies, which I'll get into when I do Darkman 3. It's fine, like, I guess Robert G. Durant was one of the best parts of the first movie, so having Larry Drake come back to play him is whatever. That you put that on a shelf, somebody is going to rent it. And as I mentioned, yeah, Liam Neeson was unavailable for this movie because why would he be available? He was like in good movies after Darkman. He doesn't need to go straight to video. But it's not a big problem because if any character could easily be recast, it's Darkman. He has a different face all the time. He makes fake skin and uses disguises. They could recast him with anybody. And you'd think maybe, hey, what if they cast Bruce Campbell as Darkman? Bruce Campbell is who Sam Raimi originally wanted for the part, and he had the cameo at the end of Darkman with one of the disguises or whatever. It's a very logical point to bring up, which is why Universal just went and cast Arnold Vosloo instead. If you don't know who Arnold Vosloo is, he's the guy who played Imhotep in The Mummy and The Mummy Returns. That actor who kind of looks like Billy Zane, but not enough where you'd be like, oh, is that Billy Zane? You'd be like, that's not Billy Zane, but it looks like Billy Zane. It makes me think, I wonder if Arnold Vosloo has ever, been mistaken for Billy Zane in public, multiple times in a day, and it just, started to really get to him. But nevertheless, all this confusion just really has me thinking, why the fuck didn't they just cast Billy Zane?
You fucking ho-dunk, po-dunk, well then there, motherfuckers!
Vosloo was approached by one of the casting agents for Renaissance Pictures while filming another movie on their catalog, which was Hard Target, and he accepted the part of Peyton Westlake, aka Darkman. It's a fine recast, but I'm gonna get a little bit more into this later, but they do this thing where they reshot the origin story from the first movie and replaced all the Liam Neeson parts with Arnold Vosloo. I guess they didn't want to pay Liam Neeson for his likeness, but they could have just done it differently and not shown his face and maybe explained why he's not an Irish guy anymore, but a South African guy. but like the whole concept of the Darkman character is actually very easy for a recast, so I guess I'm just bitching, but whatever. Now before I really dive into this movie, I do kind of want to double back over to the whole straight-to-video thing again real quick. So the common perception among the average person now is that a movie that goes straight to video or straight to streaming is an inferior product. Commonly, one would associate a straight-to-video release with a studio wanting to make a quick buck off of a familiar product. They just slap a name on it and it's like, yeah, it's Darkman, rent it, fuck you. That all rings true to a point, but like this movie, it's a lot better than it has any right being, but it's still not great, but it's watchable. In the early days of straight-to-video sequels, you did get some relative quality out of it. Like, the Scanners sequels were solid, Darkman 2 and 3 were watchable, Maniac Cop 2 is better than Maniac Cop 1. And this isn't just in regards to sequels, like, there are a modicum of quality straight-to-video movies. A lot of the time, yeah, they just take a familiar concept or a familiar face and slap it on the box, and you'll look and be like, oh yeah, it's the guy from Karate Kid in a martial arts movie. These were perfectly suitable for like a one-day rental for like $2. Straight-to-video movies were consistent up until the late 90s. You know, when the film industry decided, hey, let's just like spend as little as possible and make an actual inferior product and then just throw it out so we can get as much money as possible. I guess the principles always stayed the same, but they actually tried a little harder in the earlier days. And then it just got to a point where now straight-to-video is heavily associated with shit like what the Asylum film company was doing. I guess the best comparison I can make is that at one point straight-to-video was kind of on par with like straight-to-streaming. And there was a point where straight-to-video wasn't an official stamp of dog shit on the product's name. That came with Harvey Weinstein's handling of the Hellraiser franchise. Darkman 2, like I said, it's not great, it's not bad, it's not great, but it was well received enough in test screenings that Universal actually heavily considered releasing it theatrically, but only pulled back on that at the last minute when they realized some of the special effects did not look very good on a big screen versus a television screen. Oh, and I feel I should note that this movie was shot in my home city of Toronto, so I guess I can stamp this as obligatory Canadian content, y'all. Why would I use a southern accent to talk about Canadian content? Well, without further ado, I say we get on with the getting and we start reviewing Darkman 2, Return of Durant. Or that wasn't even southern, I just sounded like a gay foghorn leghorn. Alright, let's talk about the movie. So despite being filmed after Darkman 3, the way these movies are formatted, it's like they don't worry about the movies that come before or after it. It's kind of just a standalone, one and done, another day in the life of Darkman. Each one follows the same structure that Darkman is continuing his research into his polymer-based synthetic skin and funding it via fighting crime. He is a true anti-hero because he doesn't seem to particularly care about fighting any actual injustice unless it affects him. And at the end of the day, he's just using criminals as acceptable targets to steal from in order to fund his research. Case in point, during the opening, there's this high-speed car chase, and I can see several Toronto landmarks, such as the Molson Brewery and the Gardiner Expressway. And these two sets of criminals are chasing each other over a coke shipment. They end up wrecking their cars. There's some fucking people shot to death.
No, man! No!
And I started laughing because when the one guy started going on about the coke, he sounded so undeniably Torontonian white trash that like I just couldn't. I lost my composure because I've heard people talk like this before.
Get on that fucking tail, man! I want my fucking coke! I want my fucking money! And I want to kill those motherfuckers!
Darkman hears what's happening and you think, oh, he's gonna come in and save the day, but no, he just kind of whomps the dude with a fucking manhole cover and takes his money and leaves the coke with him so he gets arrested. Which, like, yeah, the guy's still alive after that. No, if you get fucking walloped with a fucking manhole cover, like, you know, you're done. Like, that's a fucking fatal injury there. And then, of course, we see that Durant has woken up from his 800-day coma after recovering from his slight case of a fucking helicopter crashing into the side of a bridge and exploding. Which brings me to a minor complaint about the movie. Like, I get it, it's straight-to-video slop meant to grab a quick buck at the video store, but the opening, which I did talk about earlier, frames the whole thing as if Durant was the only villain in the first movie, and completely leaves out any mention of Strack, who was the actual main villain and driving point behind the events that led to Darkman becoming disfigured. I get it, this movie's about Durant and whatnot, but in the grand scheme of things, Durant was just a pawn. Sure, he was the top crime figure here in the city in which this movie takes place, but Darkman was created due to Strack utilizing Durant as an enforcer and as muscle, which makes me believe that the notes that the writers were given for this movie were kind of like less based on the Darkman movie and more based on the Darkman failed pilot, where Durant was in fact the main villain and it was a reboot. So this wasn't really an attempt to create a sequel to Darkman, it was an attempt to kind of salvage some of the stuff from the failed TV pilot. That's just my opinion. I could probably just watch this with commentary and get an answer to my question, but I'm not going to do that. Nevertheless, I guess it's not very important because Robert G. Durant is back and he has a whole new crew of guys made up of local Toronto character actors. I think the biggest giveaway that this is a Toronto production is that I IMDb'd most of these actors and all of them had appeared on the RoboCop TV series at some point in time. So they kind of pack this full of different plot points, and it's like, for example, there's a thin-veiled shot at Hard Copy, which I liked it better when Predator 2 did it using Morton Downey Jr., but the whole story here is just kind of a similar dynamic to what happened to the Peyton Westlake character in the first movie. Essentially, Durant wants to start selling weapons again, he needs a warehouse to do it, and Glenn Humplick owns a warehouse with a generator in it to produce the power needed to do so. And he starts getting pressured by Durant's guys, but as it so happens, Glenn Humplick is also working on his own synthetic skin, which grabs Darkman's attention, and the two start to collaborate. And yeah, between movie 1 and 2, Darkman still can't quite get the skin to stay stable in daylight for more than 99 minutes. So the way they do Darkman here, it's weird. Like, I don't think Vosloo does a particularly bad job here, but the movie is clearly more fixated on Durant, which is fair because Durant was one of the best parts of the first movie, and Larry Drake is the top billed actor here. But once again, going back to my comments about this feeling more based on the failed Darkman pilot, this movie feels much more like a television production, and yeah. That's also not too far off because Universal did tend to use their television filming crews for these straight-to-video features, but yeah. It's like a television production, but it does have the budget of like a kind of low-mid-budget movie. I do like Larry Drake as Robert G. Durant. At times he does kind of ham up what the original character was, and we'll get more into that later, but he still has that intimidating presence that he had in the first movie, and Larry Drake is just so good at playing a bad guy that it's fun to watch. Case in point, when he wakes up, one of his underlings is very outspoken against him and fails to actually secure the property that they're trying to pressure Glenn Humplick out of, and then Durant finds out that this underling has been skimming from him since he was in his coma, and it leads to a pretty funny scene where he gets his teeth smashed out with a golf club and then gets put on a golf cart and rolled off of a building in the middle of Toronto's financial district. And it got a pretty good dummy shot too. Like, sometimes these dummy shots for like, especially for a straight to video movie that's shot for a smaller screen, like they get kind of ruined when you blow it up to 1080p or whatever. But no, this actually looks pretty good, and I got a cheap laugh out of it. The main problem with Durant as a whole here is that they try to give his crew kind of the dynamic that the first crew had, but it doesn't work as well. Like, the characters aren't as quirky. They don't have like a one-legged guy or like the guy from Wayne's World or like a stereotypical Latino guy. They have a white guy named Edward who can do math off the top of his head, and then they have another white guy there, and they have another white guy, and then they have a Russian guy, but he's also white. I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's less about race and more about the fact that these side characters lack the depth and substance that the crew in the first movie had. And it really doesn't help that at times Larry Drake hams up the Durant character and kind of makes it seem like something out of a cartoon. Another thing that bothers me is they really do retread a lot of things from the first movie, like the whole thing where Durant and his crew fucking confronts Glenn Humplick in his lab is very similar to how they fucking disfigured Peyton Westlake in the first movie. And from here, Larry Drake's performance kind of deteriorates because we spend a little too much time with him. The reason why the Durant character was so good in the first movie is because he was kind of a drop-in character. We got these little scenes with him, but the movie continued to focus on the Darkman character and the inner struggle with Peyton Westlake. And I would like to actually redact my statement from my review of the first movie because, yeah, I said we needed more Durant, but I think having him be an extended feature character kind of ruins his mystique. This isn't anything against Larry Drake. I love Larry Drake, may he rest in peace, but it feels like he just got a little too overexposed, and keep in mind, 5 years is a long long time between movies to expect an actor to keep a character down. Sometimes actors forget how to play a character when they've been away from it for too long, and I don't want to go so far as to say that Larry Drake forgot how to play Durant, but he definitely had trouble adapting his portrayal of Durant to this movie. I could probably blame that more so on the writing and the direction than on Larry Drake himself, because this movie is a lot less grounded and more fantastical compared to the original, and it does feel more like a fucking TV show or a cartoon. Like, Larry Drake's whole thing is he's getting into this fucking weapons deal with some neo-Nazis, and he gets like a mad scientist to create like a fucking energy weapon, and it's like, yeah, okay, you're kind of missing the assignment here. So yeah, Darkman got Glenn Humplick killed, it's his fault. I also forgot to mention that the chick from Xena plays Glenn Humplick's sister in this movie. So you think, oh, Darkman's gonna go out to get Robert Durant now, but no, because then we have a whole other storyline going on. I mentioned the hard copy parody at the beginning that follows the journalist chick, you know, the hot fucking chick smoking cigarette, dark hair. Fuck, sorry. It's the journalist lady who's hot and smokes a cigarette, is like trying to do an expose and get into like mainstream journalism, and Darkman goes to her to help expose Durant, and the two start investigating the organization. So it's like you give us one propelling build-up moment and then you just start up another one. It's like, okay guys, like get to Darkman beating up the bad guys. Like, for fuck's sake. Although I did notice something pretty funny. So when they're having the funeral for Glenn Humplick, they shot it in what I am like 99% sure is the Woodbine Graveyard, which was a spot where my friends and I used to hang out a lot when we were younger. We used to just cut through it. Sometimes like we'd drink in there. I knew a few people that fucked in there. It was just like a fun little area for all the kids of my generation. And there was actually a grave that had the name Mary Jane Stoner on it, which we all got a cheap laugh at. So Darkman's continued plan of revenge involves him trying to protect Glenn Humplick's sister from Durant's organization because she's about to sell the property to them, which leads to him tracking her down at the For Your Eyes Only Gentlemen's Club, which was actually once a very popular strip club in Toronto that is now closed. I don't think it would be like a trashy straight-to-video feature if there wasn't a strip club scene, and I gotta say, the song that plays in this scene is actually pretty good. It's this mid-90s Eurodance music titled More and More by Captain Hollywood Project. It's kind of like that shit those TikTokers parodied like a year or two ago, but it's actually a good song that fits with any mid-90s straight-to-video club environment. So essentially, Glenn Humplick's sister is going to sell her brother's property to Durant, and then hot, dark-haired chick smoking cigarette tracks down Darkman to his weird bombed-out P.O. Box location in Skid Row, and we get an argument. It's basically both of them arguing their motivations for trying to take down Durant, because Darkman's doing it for revenge, and hot lady smoking cigarette is doing it to further her career, and there's a problem here with Vosloo's performance, and it's not entirely his fault.
He took my face, my hands, he took my life!
Everybody betrayed me. I fed up with his world.
So each party here has a different interest in Durant, as mentioned, and they argue a little bit over their motivations, and then there are raised voices, and Vosloo does look good in the Darkman makeup, but because of the bandages and obviously the cheaper mask, he can't speak clearly. Neeson could talk in his mask because they obviously had a bigger budget for the Darkman mask, and they still managed to work around it by making most of Darkman's interactions with other people happen while he had a mask of skin on, and then they kept him quiet when he wasn't in a disguise, using ADR and close-ups on the mask with a moving mouthpiece for a few scenes where he does speak loudly while he's in the makeup. But it's very clear that the second Darkman mask doesn't really have that apparatus on it. It's like a solid mask, I think, and henceforth Vosloo can't really talk with it. And the bandages over his mouth like make him even more muffled, so they clearly put him in a studio after shooting this and ADR'd most of his dialogue here where he's like yelling and shit, and it seems not very fitting. It's obviously difficult to kind of do this when you're in a studio and not on location, and like somehow Vosloo manages to both underact and overact this entire argument. I like Arnold Vosloo, but like that's no, like this is fucking pretty bad.
No, that'll only drive Durant underground.
The first Darkman was a cheesy movie, but if there's anybody in the entire world who can make a cheesy movie work and be somewhat serious, it's Sam Raimi. Darkman 2 is really fucking cheesy, and it has problems making it work because it doesn't have Sam Raimi. It has a guy trying to kind of emulate the style of Sam Raimi, but like he's not able to do it. Darkman 1 is like good cheesy, Darkman 2 is kind of bordering on like grown-worthy cheesy. There's just little aspects of Darkman 2 that are like, it's going too far into cheese territory. The fucking laser gun, the skinheads, Darkman's weird little subway train thing, like it's a little bit too cheesy for me. So we spend like the first hour of the movie getting Darkman's motivation, and you'd think the fact that Durant's guys killed his scientist friend would be enough, but then no, Hot Chick does her expose on Durant and then gets exploded in a car bomb. They spent way too much time like getting to the actual enaction of the revenge plot here. Like they had 90 minutes to do this and they spent an hour of that like building up two characters to get killed by Durant. Like we're a goddamn hour into this fucking movie and only now Darkman is like doing his Darkman thing where he's like infiltrating his enemy's organization using a skin mask of one of his underlings. So Glenn Humplick's sister does figure out pretty quickly that she's in a room with the guy that killed her brother. We get a rehash of the chase scene from the first movie where Darkman pretends to be one of Durant's guys after sitting in on their meeting, and I do think the whole Imagine spot where Darkman attacks Durant is pretty funny, but there's just something kind of underwhelming about this now that they actually have it going. I was somewhat interested during the build-up of this the first time I watched it, even if it did drag a little bit, and it just kind of goes south pretty fast, because they're like, fuck, we got like less than a half hour now, we gotta wrap this shit up. I will admit though, I got a cheap laugh when they do like the which one is the real whatever fucking bit, and Laurie picks the wrong guy. Like that was okay, it kind of subverted your expectations a bit, and it was like, oh, well, you're an idiot. Another thing that kind of bothers me here is that Durant just knows Darkman by name. Like, I don't think he ever really learned his actual name before he got fucking killed in that helicopter accident. Him screaming his name feels like something out of like a fucking TV show where like the character every week would have his plans foiled but would otherwise get away and be like, the whole climax has Durant's gang about to sell their energy weapons to these far-right neo-Nazis. It's like, it's an okay ending sequence, but then it kind of just reminds me that they forgot about another Darkman aspect, and that is that due to the brain damage that he sustained, Darkman gets this crazy adrenaline boost when he's angry. And after his plan to infiltrate the arms deal between Durant and the far-right militia goes to shit, he gets chained up, him and Laurie are about to be killed, and then he gets that rage boost thing. And then, like, the neo-Nazis and Durant's gang start fighting, and they all get wiped out. The mad scientist character who makes the energy weapon is someone I haven't really touched on. He's played by character actor Lawrence Dane, who was in Scanners and Bride of Chucky, and he's just like your average eccentric mad scientist, but he's pretty good. He doesn't get a lot of screen time, but at the end when the far-right guys try to run off with the particle cannon, he just blows the lead guy away, and like, it was I got a cheap laugh out of this exchange.
You leave my babies!
They're my babies now, you commie son of a bitch!
Nazi bastard!
Now, they must have had some fucking production notes stating that they had to rerun a bunch of shit from the first movie, because the ending fight between Darkman and Durant's gang just stinks of callbacks. From him wearing one of his henchmen's faces and having a shit-eating grin when he fucking comes face to face with that henchman, to there being another game of who's the real one, which humorously ends with Durant disintegrating his own guy with the particle cannon to find the artificial hip that would differentiate the two. Like, it was pretty funny even if the effect they use for the particle cannon is a little bit dated by today's standards. But the problem is, since they spend so much time building up, the climax doesn't have a lot of time to play itself out, and then by the time Darkman actually gets Durant, it's kind of like, eh. Earlier on, we see Darkman using this, like, remote control rat thing to, like, scare his cat, and then later he uses the same mechanism to control Durant's car and blow him up. And then it just kind of ends with the whole, like, you know, Darkman's story to research his fake skin will continue. It's a very underwhelming movie. I don't think it's particularly bad. It's passable, but it's not exactly great either. I guess it kind of delivers what it promised. We do get more Darkman, but it's like diet Darkman. They overstuffed this movie with build-up because they obviously were on a limited budget, and then by the time we actually got to Darkman going after Durant, we had so little time to enjoy it that it doesn't matter. It just kind of ends. And yeah, Larry Drake came back to do Robert Durant again, but it's very clear that he was just doing it for the pay heyday, and the directors or the writers or even Larry Drake himself just hammed it up way too much. Like, for a one-time watch, this isn't that bad, but like, looking back on it, I think this movie's just a little bit too cheesy and corny for me. I understand that Universal saw there was some demand for more Darkman, and yet realized that a theatrical sequel was a very high-risk venture. And I understand that they knew if video stores put this on their shelf, it would likely garner some attraction, at least short-term, which is exactly what happened. For the first 2 weeks that it was out, it was on the Billboard Top 40 for home video rentals. So at the end of the day, while it's kind of a lackluster product, Universal did make a safe investment. The biggest point of criticism I've read about this movie is that the main reason the first movie worked was because of Sam Raimis' direction, and this movie doesn't have that. So like with this, you get nothing but like a pale imitation. It's like when they put RoboCop on TV. It's a movie that spends its first hour going in circles before trying to stuff the last 20 or so minutes with a climax. And then it tries to up the ante by including a whole scheme with energy weapons and Nazis, and it's just like, ugh. Obviously, this was an attempt to recoup the losses incurred with the failed TV pilot, which was also to feature Durant as the main villain, and it very much does feel like a TV production. A high-end TV production, but a TV production nonetheless. I wouldn't say any of the actors did like a bad job particularly. It's very clear they just did what they were told to do, and the direction and the writing was just simply not up to code. Despite bringing back Larry Drake as Durant, his performance seems sugarless. It's like being in the mood for a Coca-Cola and all they have is diet. You'll drink it, but it's lacking in vibrancy and flavor. And then you find out that sugarless motherfucker is the last drink you're ever gonna have. Damn it, I should have saved that line for when I do the third movie. I think the fact that this movie relied so much on retreading key scenes from the first movie heavily damaged this movie, because it's like, oh yeah, they did that because it happened in the first movie. And like, aside from that, nothing's really thrilling, they don't really throw you for a loop, they don't do anything new, and the energy weapons plot is fucking stupid and makes the product delve more into cartoon territory. This is a watchable movie, but I wouldn't say it's like good. I can see why they stopped after the third movie and likely wouldn't have made a third movie if they didn't shoot these back to back. I would say if you're a fan of the first Darkman movie and haven't seen this or the third one, you might get a kick out of it as a one-time viewing thing, but it's not really good. It's background shit. It's something you see on TV and figure, okay, fuck it, I'll watch this. It does stand out above what one may expect from a straight-to-video production. Like, there are explosions, there's stunt work, there's fight choreography, and there are some decent moments that are close to on par with a theatrical movie, but every time it actually gets to something, it feels undeserved because the movie itself is so flat and flavorless. Darkman 2 pretty much answered my questions from the end of the review of the first movie, which was, why didn't they do more Darkman? And the answer is because unless Sam Raimi was going to be involved, it wasn't going to turn out very good. The first movie was so great because of Sam Raimi, as well as the performances of Liam Neeson, Larry Drake, Frances McDormand, and Colin Friels, as well as the side characters. It was a simple concept, but a simple concept in the hands of a genius is a lot better than a simple concept in the hands of a fucking TV director. But yeah, no, I forgot to mention this movie was directed by Bradford May, who did a lot of TV direction, but he also did some cinematography in movies such as Monster Squad, and yeah. So yeah, outside of a few key moments, Darkman 2 was a relatively flat but inoffensive straight-to-video movie. But what about Darkman 3? Well, kids, you'll just have to wait a bit on that one, but there's one name attached to Darkman 3 that does inspire a little bit of hope, and that name is Jeff Fahey. Oh, there we go. The Darkman trilogy is on its way to being completed on this channel. I've kind of just been interested in like finishing off some of the franchises that I've started here because I'm a little uninspired. But if you've seen it, what did you think about it? Let me know. If you're a fan of the first Darkman and haven't seen it, I don't know, check it out. It's watchable. It's okay for a first-time watch. So yeah. If you like this video, like, subscribe, share me with your friends, and yeah, I'll see you next time.
Where's my fucking money?
Came in Bank of Commerce, Mr. Durant. I got an account there. I was gonna tell you. It was gonna be a surprise.
Oh, I'm surprised. Can't you tell? And now I have a surprise for you.
No!